Bloodborne immediately makes clear that you are an outsider, a stranger in this place, which takes on the appearance of a dream, strange and shifting and haunting and beautiful. As you wake up in a dark room and are told to seek pale blood, to transcend the hunt, the entire game has the quality of a nightmare that you can't wake up from. You push open a gate and step into streets death has encroached upon. Endless spires up above, pointing towards some unseen savior. The sky, a pale orange, swirling around this place like a visible miasma. Carriages lie abandoned, the horses that once drew them decaying in the middle of the road. A clock tower bell chimes and startles you into movement. You kill some folks who sought to kill you first, and as you climb a ladder, which will take you to some new part of the city, your hood now covered in blood, you look back and see the setting sun, hanging low behind the place where you began, horrible and shining like a guillotine, waiting to be dropped. Beasts stretched across crucifixes and set aflame, the wails of men behind locked doors rising above the sound of the crackling flame. Men wielding pitchforks fight off some insatiable bestial impulse. You seek the pale blood as well as the pink flame of lanterns outside homes where you may be aided by someone inside, but are more often turned away or greeted by the sound of madness. Voices calling out from the darkness moan about curses, and dogs who have developed a taste for human flesh seek to remove yours from your body. You move through houses overrun by squatters and trip over coffins as you advance ever higher, the guillotine's sun now at eye level. You cross a bridge in the hope that you may leave this place that had somehow gone so wrong. And just then, some beast, larger than any you'd seen before, swoops down and removes your neck from between your shoulders. Back again into the nightmare. I dreaded stepping foot in Henwick Charnel Lane, where crazed village women cackled and screamed, and others gasped for breath as they swayed in a circle next to a guillotine, holding torches and sickles. The bodies of their dead hung as if made to eternally listen to their wicked ritual. I stood on the slanted tiles of a roof and stared across at a castle whose bridge appeared to be crumbling into the sea. I wondered what royalty would allow these heathens to frolic in the night like this, partaking in some evil tradition upheld by witches who wanted eyes for seeing what the rest of us could not. I'm not sure we will ever see another game world with an aesthetic this original and cohesive, which somehow combines seemingly incompatible horror elements and creates something entirely its own. Something so enticing that it caused countless people to learn more complicated combat systems than they were used to in order to see more of this world. I was among those people, as this was my entry point into From Software's games, which delight and confound. The combat didn't come naturally, but I made a decision that I would spend the time required to learn the systems in order to make progress. The boss who stood in my way the most was the blood-starved beast, whose wiry form could close on me before I knew it, its insides hanging off its shoulders like a bright red cape whose music alone struck fear in my heart. a sound like daggers ripping through flesh. I couldn't beat this boss for days, but I had resolved to see this world in its entirety. Eventually, I beat the blood-starved beast, and I never had so much trouble with a boss in a Souls-like game from then on. Overcoming this boss opened up the game to me, and it opened up the rest of From Software's games as well. It's interesting though. For many people, the blood-starved beast may have posed little challenge, and they may have instead had their resolve tested by Vicar Amelia or Rom the Vacuous Spider. The point being that each of these bosses is so distinct, so refined in aesthetics and moveset, that any one of them could potentially be someone's favorite or most hated, or the one where everything clicked into place. I was told that to get to the college, I had to go through the woods. I spoke to a dead man who wanted a password. Something strange passed from my lips, and I'm not sure I was even aware of what I was saying. But I found myself in a place where death seemed preordained. A darkened wood, full of frights, traps, and beasts around every corner. If there's a more dreadful place, I do not know it. I spotted the college from a spot up above the trees, its blue dome towering above the shimmering lake, the full moon reflecting on its gentle waves. This moon, I should have known, would bring out the worst of them. On a rooftop, I watched in horror as a barely clothed human form feasted on the flesh and blood of some hapless villagers. I attacked him and he revealed his true form. Some voice, like human and beast combined inside him, tried to make me question my motive for killing. But I know a beast when I see one, and beasts shall not be spared. We talk about this game frequently alongside the word Lovecraftian, but so often do projects inspired by Lovecraft end up going off the rails. Lovecraft himself had the not insignificant advantage of being a writer, and thus a horrific description could suffice. Words that stretched the mind and imparted fear. He had no concern about the person down the line who sought to translate his monsters from page to screen. So the process of rendering gods of the sort Lovecraft wrote about into actual visual images worthy of fear and awe has seldom yielded anything close to what From Software was able to achieve with Bloodborne. This is a monumental effort that has depth and range. The gods of Lovecraft, with penny dreadful monsters and creatures who have no clear antecedent. There are bosses who are human or appear to be human before becoming monstrous and bloodthirsty. Many-eyed gods, or gods who are beckoned down to earth by umbilical cords, or gods whose skin is pale and wet like some creature who had only ever known darkness. Bosses whose attacks become more frantic as they feel closer to death, the urge to kill before they are killed coursing through their veins as some human part inside of them still remains. Got snatched up by some cloaked kidnapper who imprisoned me. I was forced to fight my way out, past crones who tried to scoop out my eyeballs, and jailers who moved slowly, but were skilled at making it hurt real bad before you slip from the world. The last thing you saw in this one, their cold gray skin and dead eyes, came upon a skeletal beast who seemed animated by some galvanizing force that I lacked the words to describe. This is a taught masterclass in visual storytelling. Preferring to keep cutscenes brief and infrequent, story is mostly surrendered in the form of details in the environment or music boxes from little girls or giant pigs who drop red ribbons upon being slain. Instead of placing you in the story as it happens, you are picking up the pieces, the skulls, the brooches, after the fact. The sky is a main character in this game. I remember being shocked when I defeated a boss and the sky finally darkened. A moon where the sun used to be. As if that terrible creature's mere existence was standing in the way of Earth's natural process. A lot of what makes this game so good boils down to atmosphere. The feeling of standing in churches where fading light filters in through lancet windows and statues of bearded men with bandaged eyes raise their arms in supplication, while outside some many-armed abomination clings to the building. Entering colleges where communication with gods was possible, but now lie abandoned. Nestled in twisting woods where snake-headed men walk. There is no game that has better enemy design. You will fight werewolves, trolls who pound the ground with bricks, giant rats, sideways-faced monkey men, long-tongued human leeches whose bellies are engorged with blood. You can wield a sword that beams out slicing glacial light, or a saw cleaver that cuts through beasts, fur and bones and blood and guts. This sublime combination of aesthetics and feel make for a game whose systems are perfectly in step with its world. Terrible goings on at the college. Insects walking around like men, their bodies draped in tattered clothing. Some creature that I'm certain did not originate from this planet crawled to me on its many legs, shooting balls of flame, its abdomen open to reveal many sharp teeth, its long neck swinging wildly with glowing tendrils running along its stretching surface, which culminated in some terrible lamprey mouth, out of which came some alien flower, which I would have said was beautiful had it not been for the creature in possession of it. A creature who I would have sworn I'd slew, but that could not be true, for when I was certain I'd see it fall, it disappeared into a vortex. As I stood there and felt the urge to move forward leave me, the moon shone strangely on the lake now, as if it were double, as if there were one moon in the sky and one moon at the bottom of the lake. I knew somehow I must move on if I were ever to break free from this nightmare and find myself back in the waking world. I slew a scholar who was practiced in magic of a wicked sort, and read, among the collection of arcane leather-bound books in the library, something strange about a red moon and some hideous conception ritual. An old man, leaning back in an ornate rocking chair in robes of blue and white, his eyes covered by a silver blindfold, could only gesture toward the lake. So I jumped, and instead of feeling the icy cold water on my skin, I was somehow standing atop the lake's surface. There is a change that occurs upon beating this game. Where once the world was traversed in fits and starts, in fear and doubt, on ladder rungs and narrow ledges and body-strewn paths, this huge-seeming world spiraling and unfolding and incomprehensible until the very end. On a second playthrough, the world shrinks and, depending on your skill, can be ran through at a blazing speed when you know which paths are fruitless, which items are useless, and when you understand in greater detail some complexity in the story that eluded you during your first playthrough, as some new aspect of the world that you hadn't much considered reveals itself. What is it about this game that keeps me coming back? More than anything, I'd liken it to a greatest hits album by my favorite artist. Just like a great song I've heard 1,000 times, that I may decide to skip once in a while I'm listening to the record. So too, I might decide to skip a boss on one playthrough just because I'm not feeling it this time around. It'll be there next time around. And that's the thing with greatest hits albums. The songs are all good, and everything in this game is good. In fact, it's really when you play a game like this, the explorative impulse mostly gone, as you have all the items you need and know what every nook and cranny hold as you move forward breathlessly, taking down one boss after another, that you see the masterpiece inside the masterpiece. The intensely surreal atmosphere and terrific sense of discovery present in a first playthrough transfer into a feeling of appreciation for the cohesion, possibility, and focus From Software imbued the game with on an additional playthrough. They created a game whose magic doesn't wear off after you know every secret and have seen every area. There's no mandatory part that you don't feel like doing, no boring exposition or hour-long tutorial. Once you've beaten it once, you will somehow be called back into the nightmare, and you will know what to expect, but will embrace its cold touch, like a hug from an old friend. I am becoming confused now by the path ahead, staircases and jail cells that I sprint past, a blood moon, newly born unto a purple sky, the product of some terrible ritual, some tear in the veil that we were never supposed to see beyond, a process that, once started, cannot be undone, the entire world shifting into some even more surreal phantasmagoria, the moon's bloody glow seeming to intensify with every step, chased by skeleton balls and maniacal hunters, then shocked into stillness as the moon is covered in black, some hideous ink smudge from which amniotic fluid spills as it pulses and births some profane creature made up of skulls and mutilated flesh, organs and viscera swinging as it thrashed madly, further into madness, past men who wore cages on their heads, and dogs with crow heads and crows with dog heads. The world ceasing to be recognizable, I ran through twisting halls where I could finally fight the host of the nightmare, who resorted to trickery but could not mask his weakness in a real battle. The massive pigs now, with many eyes. All this to kill some phantom who wielded many curved swords and acted as the wet nurse for a nightmare. When you arrive at the end of the game, you can choose the way you want to finish up. I could have drawn down a creature from the moon who is more alien than beast. Or maybe next time I'll allow myself to get scooped up and teleported to an area that feels familiar, but is somehow different. A place where the clouds cling to the sun, as if caught in the center of a spider's web, as if being slowly consumed. The landscape changed entirely, where a river of blood flows from a boss's kill room, and the terrain is warped, once flat areas, rising strangely like tumors, and just beyond, A little hamlet awaits, a shadow cast over it by some strange and terrifying creature left orphan. But this time, I will finish up with a fight against the first hunter, who fights with elegance and grace until his death. I go back into the waking world until the hunt begins again, and I'll know when it does. I'll feel it in my blood.